Hey everybody, thank you for joining me. Today I would like to look at several metal releases from my neck of the woods. So I live in a town called Aurora, which is about 40 minutes north of Toronto, and I live very close to the border of a town called Newmarket. And I find Aurora and Newmarket have always been kind of paired up together. And growing up, and to the current day, I always found that there wasn't too much of a metal scene, almost no bands, and no live shows. But things are starting to get a little better. I've seen some kind of, stoner rock, stoner metal things at local bars. There's a rehearsal place called The Spot, which is starting to throw punk, metalcore, deathcore shows. Nothing really for me, but good to see and a great start. And growing up, there was one band in extreme metal, and that was a band called Rotting. So Rotting existed between 1992 and 2000. And during my high school years, I'd hear some of the punk kids talking about them. And I think I was definitely more into metal than these guys were. But I was always a little bit maybe put off by some of the album artwork and some of the lyrics. Definitely was a little extreme for me at the time. But I never forgot about them. And more recently, I have finally gotten a copy of their one and only full-length album, Crushed. This was originally put out on United Guttural back in 1998, but this is a independently released reissue from 2007. It comes with a death cover, a Pull the Plug, and a couple live tracks. So I see some flyers, some stickers. Again, hear some other people talking about them, and even a very small amount of exposure in some of the metal magazines. But again, a more recent acquisition, I'm pretty sure I bought this directly from the ex-singer of the band. And this is definitely straightforward death metal, but a cool mix of brutal death metal, classic old school death metal, and a bit of death grind. Very strong start to the album. I'm hearing a lot of the American legends like Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, Obituary, Suffocation. Effortlessly enjoyable death metal, but the second half is definitely a lot weaker and more generic, but I like the whole thing. Another cool thing too is that I remember looking through an old Metal Maniacs or something, and in the shorts column, I saw an ad for something called Catacombs Music or Catacombs Records or something, and it had a Main Street address. And Main Street is the old downtown part of Newmarket. And I'm there a couple times a week easy. Great place to go out with the wife, great place to bring the kids, great place for a nice walk. And I really can't believe that back in the 90s, they seemingly had a metal store on that street. And when I look through Google, I find nothing about it, but I know I saw that ad, and if anyone has some information on it, it would be cool to hear. So, yeah, again, Rotting, if you look at Spotify, to this day, they have like 4,000 monthly listeners basically on the strength of this one album. Although much less remembered than Rotting, I'd say the other extreme metal classic from around here is Echoes of Refuge, the one and only full-length album by Adytum, released in 2007 on Northern Storm Records. And the two guitar players in this band, Brendan and Daniel, have gone on to be very prolific in the metal scene, and we'll be talking about a bunch of their projects. Metal Archives has this labeled as progressive black death metal, and when you put it on, the unavoidable conclusion is that Opeth is far and away the biggest influence. The clean vocals definitely remind me of Opeth. The guitars big time remind me of Opeth. But the extreme vocals are definitely more of a black metal thing than the more death metal oriented vocals of old Opeth. So we have 5 long songs here. My favorites are the opener and closer, Wendigo, and Echoes of Refuge. They both contain amazing guitar work and a strong Opeth Blackwater Park influence, which I know I'm not the only one, but that's definitely my favorite Opeth album. So I believe, on a personal note, I believe they've had a couple bass players back then, but the guy that recorded bass on this album is a guy named Ryan Lewis, and I asked myself if I know that guy, because I played hockey in high school with a guy named Ryan Lewis, and he lived in Newmarket. He was the same age as these guys, aka a year or two younger than me. And in like my early 20s, I bumped into him at a bar, and I was definitely a little loaded, so I don't remember all the details of the conversation, but I remember we were talking about metal. He said he was into Opeth and Dream Theater, and I think he said he played an instrument. So, like, it makes sense that would be the same guy. It's not that big of a town. And, yeah, when was it? And also, that was in 2007. We were watching UFC, Gonzaga Couture, GSP, Just Koscheck 1, back in 2007. Same year this was released. Makes total sense. And I wonder if his buddies with him at the bar that night were the other Addendum guys. Never know. Before I move on, actually, I heard an interview with Brendan from the band on the Heavy Hole podcast, which is a pretty cool death metal podcast. And that put a big smile on my face. Just a lot of stories about growing up in Newmarket, references to the Metro grocery store, which I worked at for years, and Tom and Jerry's Wings, which I still go to monthly, I say. So it's kind of fun thing to listen to. So Brendan and Daniel have now gone on to some bigger and better things. Right now they are, amongst other things, in the death metal band Gut Void. This is their debut full-length, Durance of Lightless Horizons, on Blood Harvest. So they have a new drummer and bassist, and this is probably their most popular project that they've been involved with so far. And I'm actually fairly new to these guys, because I knew the name, I knew it was a death metal band from the Toronto area, and I'd have to think I might have given it a stream or two. But I kind of forgot about them. And then a couple months ago, it somehow came to my attention that these guys played the spot, the rehearsal place that I just referenced. And I was like, wow, a death metal show there. If I knew, I would have went. And it said they were hometown guys. I didn't know that either. So grabbed the album and checked it out. I was also looking at a lot of great reviews online, especially Mystification Zine, which I think has some of the best metal reviews online, and they gave it 95 out of 100, which definitely caught my attention. And I'm definitely blown away by this album. I just had this on repeat and shuffle just for many evenings, and I gotta agree with the general sentiment of the style here. You got the old Finnish influence of bands like Demilich and Crips, combined with the newer American doomy death metal like Spectral Voice and Mortiferum. So it's 6 tracks between 5 and 15 minutes, not a second wasted. And when did this come out? I think it came out in like 2022. And my favorite track on here is probably the second one, In Caverns It Lurks. And I don't think these guys live around here anymore, but it's definitely fun to have something approaching like a home team death metal band. And I will 100% be buying the new EP, which I think comes out later this month, August 2024. So I mentioned that Brendan and Dan have been very prolific. Dan has several death metal oriented projects, as does Brendan. But he has some more, a little bit more variety in his projects. You got the progressive metal of Wexler's Prime. You have the Meshuggah worship of Simulacra, and a lot of other things. But we're going to check out a few of these projects on some splits. This is Medieval Grime, a 6-track split on CDN Records between Puke Wraith and Intestinal Hex. 3 songs each. So, Puke Wraith, great mix of American and European style death metal, everything from Autopsy to Grave, while Intestinal Hex shares similar influences but has a sound of their own. And finally, another one of Dan's projects, Fumes, and a split with the American band Thorn. Both of these bands are bringing you some doomy death metal. I'd say Thorn are a little bit more unique in sound, but I think I prefer the slightly more straightforward tracks from Fumes. I picked up a bunch of other associated releases with these guys, and I'll let you know what I think as I listen to them. And thanks for watching.